Welcome to the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership Podcast. Subscribe now so you don't miss a drop of straight talk you can't get anywhere else. We discuss the whiskeys to drink, music to listen to, and what it really takes to be an effective leader. I'm your host, Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. Tonight's guest, speaker, author, and compassion consultant, Marcus Engel. Hey, what you drinking?
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I also love what you said about compassion versus judgment. I would suggest that there is probably a need for a lot of self-compassion because there's a lot of self-judgment. And, I just had this conversation with one of my clients 2 days ago, and every comment that they were making started with, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I should be further along in my career. I should be calling that client back. I should be doing this. And the phrase that I use with my colleagues, and I use with my clients kind of jokingly is, boy, you're just shoulding all over yourself, aren't you? Because anytime you use the word should, you're passing judgment. And in many cases, that is the internal dialogue. Wow, I should be whatever, fill in the blank. And we're passing judgment over our own life rather than giving ourselves some compassion and some empathy, because in most cases, we're making the best decision with the information that we have now. What suggestions do you have, or what tools do you have to turn that compassion? It would be valuable for us to use this with our patients, with our clients. What recommendations do you give for turning that compassion inward and giving ourselves some empathy?
Wow. So I guess whenever we talk about turning compassion inward, I almost have to take off my hat as a teacher and put on my hat as a patient of counseling and therapy for decades now. Growing up back in the 80s and 90s, I guess we always thought that there was this idea that, if you go to counseling or if you go to therapy, you must be crazy. It's totally not the case, right? Especially for those of us who might have a over-identified self. Whenever we start thinking about ourself too much, guess what? That's where anxiety and depression and hang-ups all come in. We get way too focused on ourself. And sometimes it's a lot easier to be compassionate towards someone else than to ourselves. We internally often talk to ourselves. Our inner voice is often talking to ourselves in a way that we would never talk to another person. We would never talk to another person the way our inner voice talks to us. And I think being able to keep that inner voice talking to us, but talking over there, that voice doesn't have to be right here in your ear. That inner voice, that inner critic doesn't have to be right here in your ear. And just being aware that you can turn down the volume on that inner critic, who might just need the volume turned down from time to time. I think that is an act of self-compassion, being able to step away from oneself to be able to look at all the things that make us uniquely human, right? There's all the different things that make each of us uniquely human. And we try to find those common ties between you and I. We could immediately sit here and start talking about St. Louis. We can talk whiskey. We can talk music. Whenever we are open and our authentic selves, it makes it so much easier to be able to connect with those individuals. But no one really, I know that this has been said by people better than me. It's that idea that nobody really cares what you know until they know that you actually care. And if you can show that you care, people will feel that. Whether or not you say the exact right words or not, people can feel it when you care.
Wow. It just occurred to me that, well, let me tell you what's in my head, and you can tell me if I'm right or not, or if I missed the mark. It seems to me like your entire class is on how to be a person first. And if that's the case, what has happened to our society where we've got to get smart people to learn how to be people as opposed to leading with being a doctor first, or leading with being an executive first, or leading with being whatever your occupation is. We're saying try being a person first. What's happened to our society from your perspective that we need to have a class on how to be a person first?
Wow. There's a lot of things that's wrong with society, right? I mean, we could go back to the founding of our country. We could go to the social structures that are set up in today's society. We could go to the way that healthcare is set up in Western culture. We could go with Western culture altogether. I'm currently reading a wonderful book by Dr. Gabor Mate called The Myth of Normal. Our culture is toxic. Our absolute culture is toxic, and it's sending us to doctors to beg for antidepressant medication, especially in the wake of the pandemic here. We have seen such higher rates of drug and alcohol abuse. We've seen higher rates of domestic violence and child abuse. We are suffering as a society now in different ways than we were suffering 3 years ago. But everything in our society comes back to relationships, right? And how do we provide that care to our fellow human beings while still doing the job? How do you turn that off at the end of the day? And I think many of us may struggle with this, not just in healthcare, but gosh, I have many friends who are law enforcement officials, and I don't understand it quite. How do you go chase bad guys from 9 to 5, and then you go sit with Susie on the couch and play dollies after dinner? That's something that's very difficult for me to comprehend in my white collar professional role, sitting behind a computer all day. But that's very much something that we have to deal with in our society, and we're a society that's still trying to figure out what we are, but the disparities that have been known, but recently more uncovered for wider society, those are things that we're fighting against too, so that everybody truly has that equal opportunity to be treated humanely and fairly and compassionately in our society when the chips really go down, when there is need of medical recovery, when there's an injury or a life-threatening illness.
You've earned at least 15 more points with me because you mentioned one of my new favorite books that I'm in the middle of reading, and that is The Myth of Normal. And the way that I have tried to describe that book, and I want you to help me with this, is that we have, as individuals and as a society, we have normalized trauma. And then we pat ourselves on the back for marginal advancements in reducing the trauma. And the example that I give is that we can look at a city and say, wow, look at us. We've reduced crime from violent crimes from 15 times a month to 9 times a month. Wow, that's an incredible progress. Aren't we doing great? Wait a second. We still have 9 violent crimes in a month? That's not normal. But yet we get so excited about these nominal progressions in these things that we should be focused on zero. And to your point, in the medical field, which is where the book was written to address, things such as, having an ailment in, gosh, my heart only hurt 2 times last month. It didn't hurt 5 times like before. I must be getting better. Wait a second. Your heart hurt 2 times last month? We're not seeing that as trauma. We're not seeing that as a problem. We're applauding ourselves for making these nominal improvements in these areas that we should be trying to eradicate totally. So,
Yeah, well, I couldn't highly recommend the book enough, and I'm sure you're the same. This is one of those rare books that as soon as I finish it, I'm going to go read it again because it's just that important. I think it will help you help you, the larger you, understand maybe a little bit more of our ailments aren't because of our environment, aren't because of bad choices. It goes a lot deeper than that. It goes a lot deeper than that.
Yeah, well, hey, I'll tell you. So you earned 15 points for the myth of normal, but you may have gotten a whole nother 25 points from me when I understand your musical selection is about as diverse as I have seen. Bob Dylan, who is still an enigma to me, right? I understand that he's a genius. I can appreciate, but he's still a bit of an enigma for me. But Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Rolling Stones, and then Miles Davis and Sinatra, and then you said anybody in the Marcellus family. Talk to me about the diversity of your music preferences, because usually people lean hard to one genre or the other, but you're kind of all over the place.
I try to be a little all over the place because there's such good music out there. I love jazz, but jazz is not my usual go-to genre of music. What I've learned over the years is that I love poetry. And that's so crazy because I'm a farm boy from the Midwest. I'm in no way the hoity-toity, eating crumpets and tea and listening to poetry being read aloud at a salon. That's so not really me. However, when it comes to musical lyrics, I have been able to draw such deep teachings and lessons from, like, one of the reasons that I'm alive is because of a line in a Bob Dylan song where he said, negativity don't pull you through. And when I heard that, still laying in a hospital bed and attached to a breathing tube, I knew that that was right. I knew that I can't focus on all the negative stuff in my life. I've got to look at the positive things that I still have. Well, what do I still have? Laying in this hospital bed blind, what do I still have? Well, I still have my brain, and I still have my family, and I still have my friends. And with those three pillars, that's what I started to rebuild my life with. But why did I even think in that way? It was because of Bob Dylan. Bruce Springsteen's got lines in several of his songs. One that I love is, fear is a powerful thing. It'll turn your heart black. You can trust. I don't want to ever live in fear. I can't live in fear. It will eat me up inside. So these are the kind of things that whenever I hear lyrics that encapsulate the feelings that I have or the experiences that I've had, those are what tend to resonate with my soul the most. But I'm a child of the '80s. I grew up. Probably some of my first musical influences were Van Halen and Michael Jackson and Bruce Springsteen in circa 1984.
Mm-hmm.
And that, of course, went into exploration of many different kinds of music. And I went through my gangster rap phase whenever I was in, well, I still like gangster rap. Not gonna lie, I still listen to NWA. I still love Snoop. I love the whole Death Row catalog. And I'm also a musician. I play acoustic guitar and get to jam sometimes. And so I like to play the kind of things that have been big influences on my life. And there have been a lot of those different influences.
Mm. Now I got to ask, what is alternative country? I've never heard of alternative country.
Wow. So you would think of alt country or alternative country. These are kind of like the outlaws of the old days of Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Chris Christopherson, those kind of guys. This is the new chapters that are a lot of them based in Texas, but country that wouldn't get played necessarily on top 40 country radio. My wife says that alt country, a lot of the music is about sin. It's about drinking and cheating and fighting. And so it kind of looks at the dark underbelly of the rural lifestyle like I grew up in.
Wow. So the joke that we tell a lot in our family is, if you play the country song backwards and you get your dog back, you get your car back, and you go back to work.
Right. Yeah. You get your wife back too, maybe.
maybe. Wow. So, okay. So let's go back to this idea of jazz, the metaphor, because for me, there is no better example of that metaphor than my own career. Because if you had asked me 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, what I was going to be, I would have told you very clearly, very succinctly, with a lot of bass in my voice, that I was going to be the senior vice president of sales for a Fortune 500 company. That's what everything was for. And today, that doesn't turn me on. And the route that I've taken, the path that my life has taken and my career has taken, doesn't make sense to that 20-year-old back then. Now I'm coaching executives from all over the world. I'm coaching executives that are doing things that I probably could never ever do, but yet I'm still showing up in a way that's able to add value to them. So that jazz metaphor of the path that we take is usually unplanned. How does that jazz metaphor compare to your career? Because I don't know that you would have thought that you would be doing what you're doing and talking about what you're talking about 25 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. So if you would have asked me laying in that hospital bed, Marcus, what do you think you can do with your life? I don't know, right? I didn't know any blind people to ask, like, what is even a possibility? And the way that technology is certainly advanced and helped make the playing field a lot more level, there is more security out there in the world, that there's more job opportunities. And yet you got blind people that are still unemployed and underemployed by a significant margin compared to greater society. So if we look at the metaphor of jazz, and we keep talking about how we don't know the destination, where we're going to end up. I wouldn't have been able to tell you at 18 years old, laying in that hospital bed, that I would have ever. I thought, yeah, maybe someday I'll get married, and had no idea I'd have kids or grandkids, or had no idea I'd be teaching at Notre Dame. A couple of years ago, I in 2019, for International Nurses Day, I had got the invitation to come speak to a delegation of about 400 nurses at the UN headquarters in New York. And I sit there thinking, this kind of stuff does not happen to boys from Montgomery County, Missouri. This kind of stuff doesn't get to happen to many people at all. And I could have never even planned it, couldn't have even dreamed that I would ever be speaking at the UN. But you keep following the path, right? You let the things play out, and sometimes it turns into a beautiful and unexpected experience.
Wow. I can't think of more articulate words to say than wow. You have lived quite the life. And we've talked a lot about how the principles from your life, the principles that you talk about, the principles that you teach, really transfer to any level of leadership in any industry. There is one area of leadership that I am constantly getting my clock cleaned, and that is trying to lead my daughter as a father. Because for whatever reason, this fatherhood stuff doesn't fit the brochure that they gave me at the beginning of the course, right? They said you're gonna get a tie on Father's Day, and you're gonna get, these loving eyes looking up at you. And yeah, those things are true, but boy, there's so much in between those things that you can't anticipate. What would you say is the role, fatherhood, but parenthood, as it pertains to this area of compassion and demonstrating compassion? Because much like we said at the beginning of our conversation, sometimes you got to deliver some tough news, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Sometimes even as a parent, you've got to deliver some discipline. You've got to deliver some grounding, some punishment, some taking some things away, because the path that the person that you're responsible for, it's not heading in the right direction. So you've got to deliver some tough news. However, there still is a responsibility for compassion. How do you balance that when it comes to being a dad?
So I'm probably not the greatest person to ask When I got married, I've been married 16 years. Whenever I got married, I got 3 teenage stepchildren in the mix. It was kind of like instant family, just to add Marcus. And so to come alongside these 3 kids at such a time in their life, transition from their original birth family to parental divorce and relocation, et cetera. My thought was just be a constant in that child's life. Be present. Back to what we said earlier, be present in that child's life. And we can't always be 100% present 100% of the time. We can't. You'll just get distracted, right? You're at a kid's soccer game and you get a business call that you really need to take, or you're sitting at the dinner table and a text comes in that you really need to take care of. So I just believe that, much like showing other human beings that we recognize their humanity with our compassion, I think it's the same thing with our kids, right? One thing that I've also come to learn is that boundaries are one of the ways that our kids know that we love them. Is to no, I'm sorry, I love you too much to let you go on a four-state road trip with your friends. I'm sorry, no, that's not going to happen. I may not be the greatest example of being a father, because I'm just a stepfather and all my kids are now in their 30s. But I would say that the role that I love the most in my life is being a grandfather these days. And even though I'm kind of young to be a grandpa, I love it, because these kids are, our job as grandparents is just to make sure these kids go through life knowing how many people love them and support them. Kids feel that, they're going to listen to those people around them.
Man, I tell you, I love this conversation. I don't want it to end. Fortunately for me, we've got a VIP room that I've got to bring you into, because my VIPs are going to love the conversation. Plus, man, just the books you've listed as your favorite books, the 4 Agreements. We got to talk about the 4 Agreements. Then you got a couple that I haven't heard of. The Road Back to You and Illusions. I just got to hear more about what goes into creating the kind of mind that does the work that you do. Plus, I know that celebration is a big part of what you talk about. So I really would love to understand how we can celebrate. Yeah, celebrating the big things is kind of obvious, but how can we celebrate the smaller things, the more frequent things, the daily things, so that we can manage our tendency to get burned out, which we talked about that with the Sunshine book earlier. Man, I've really enjoyed the conversation. I've really enjoyed meeting you. Thanks to Mr. Frank Kitchen, CSP, for suggesting that we get together, because this has been an absolute blast. Before I let you go to enter into the VIP room, how can people get a hold of you if they want to hear more about how to engender more compassion in the workplace?
So the best way is just to go to marcusengel.com. That's my name, MarcusEngel.com. And if you want to get on the mailing list that gives compassionate tips every week and videos, there's a whole bunch of stuff out there for free. All of my books out there, a lot of my books are being used in nursing school curriculum and health profession school curriculum coursework. Just a lot of stuff out there that you can get a hold of. And if I can help you out with an event and you want to bring in something that's got a powerful message for everybody, because we are all human, please reach out on marcusengel.com.
Well, this is great, man. Well, hey, raise that Montgomery County
bourbon right here, right there.
And man, I'm gonna have to go looking for that, man. Find a couple of spots, a couple of stores that might carry it. We got some wine and cheese places out here. Mm-hmm. We've got Total Wine. Boy, I should be paying for advertising, because there's a couple spots we got out here, man. But thank you so much. Until the next time, raise your glass.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, it's not too late. Hit that subscribe button so you're sure to catch the next episode. If you're really enjoying the vibe, leave us a review or become a VIP for guest and show exclusives. Cheers.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.